Welcome. I'm Aaron Hill. I joined our team at Benson Financial Group formally in 2023, early 2023, after some time in higher education as a coach and adjunct professor, finishing at Culver Stockton near the end of my coaching career. But I've been familiar with Benson Financial Group for a long time. My mom and dad worked at Benson Financial Group from 2004 to last May, so about 20 years. So have known Pat and Connie and so many of the team members for a long time. It's a sweet place to work, and we're glad that you're here tonight. I'm married to my wife, Andrea. We live in Canton, Missouri, up Highway 61. We have 4 kids, 9, 7, 4, and 2. You'll meet and hear about them as we go a little bit. With 4 kids, I told some of you this earlier, we will have as many pictures as possible. So when we read, picture books are the preference, and I like pictures in PowerPoint presentations. So as you come in the doors tonight, I'm curious if we fill in the blank. This is your opportunity to yell at the speaker too. So crowd participation is encouraged. If you fill in the blank tonight, I hope what would you fill in the blank with?
Learn something.
All right, there we go. Broke the ice with a good one. Tonight, I hope we learn. All right, yeah. Fun. Did you say dance? That's up to you. I don't know if that one's in the cards for me. But I'll add to fun, and we'll throw it underneath it. We will say laugh. Some of the slides even should have an element of entertainment to them. And it's okay for us not to take ourselves too seriously all the time. So we have learn. Tonight I hope we have fun. I hope we laugh. What else?
Exactly the topic.
Okay. Maybe gain some clarity or purpose on our giving. What else as you walked in the doors? If you beforehand were like, what is Aaron going to talk about? And I wonder what this seminar is going to feel like.
Maybe encourage to give more.
Okay. Encouraged. There's a really low-hanging fruit sort of answer that's right in front of you, that hopefully good food is in the cards. Hopefully you've enjoyed dinner. The reason I kind of bring that up, I'm a dad. I'm allowed to make dad jokes, but food and food for thought maybe as well. Puns, whether they're accidental or on purpose, I'll take credit for them. And I'll go maybe a step further on maybe to learn and maybe gain some clarity on giving with purpose, and we're encouraged. How about maybe we even squirm in our seats a little bit? Maybe at times we get a little bit uncomfortable wrestling with some issues of the heart that begin a conversation with ourselves, maybe with our spouse or significant other, and then maybe that continues into ongoing meetings and conversations with us in the office as advisors. So those would be some awesome objectives or goals that hopefully as we finish the night and you have some takeaways, those objectives are met. So tonight it's really a journey. It's an exercise. The first half, more, we'll call it holistic, heart level, motivations behind giving. Then we do get into some tactical type things. And if it was coming in with, I want to learn something more about tax efficiency or how my giving and my tax picture can complement one another, we'll get to that as we go. But I think those two things, they work hand in hand. So it's really a journey, an exercise to start a conversation or continue on and gain some momentum. So as we go, I figure we need to start in the beginning. So we'll share some things that we have in common. This is my daughter, sweet Eiley Ann. She's 2. This was her first birthday. She's got 3 older brothers. So for those of you who maybe have kids in the home or grandkids or great-grandkids, nieces and nephews, what do babies do?
Anything they want.
Yeah, I think you named them, right? Like it's the eat, the sleep, the cry, the use the bathroom, and then rinse and repeat the cycle, and we keep going from there. And sometimes they don't sleep as much as we want them to. I can tell you, Eiley right now is a almost 3-year-old. She has a very strong grip. She did not come into this world with a well-defined worldview, at least not one with much depth. But she can hold on to things, and some of those things are her brothers. Sometimes it's their arm or back or shoulders or hair. But she doesn't come into this world with the disposition that I want to give and be generous. And I can tell you, if her next oldest sibling, our youngest boy Spencer, was eating with you, however much food you had tonight, he would surely have double. So he has just a struggle, and it'll be something we have to coach him through, with just a scarcity mindset. Probably comes from being the youngest boy and the big brother's taking his things. But when it comes to food, especially on Friday night pizza night, like I promise he's a slice or two ahead of his big brothers all the time. But yeah, Eiley, Spencer, their older siblings, they're a joy, but we're still coaching them through a lot of the things that maybe they're childish, but some of us, too, are guilty of some of the same things. So some things we have in common. We all start in the same place, come into the world empty-handed. Someday we all leave the world. We know that, and we're human. Our days are numbered. We don't know when. I had a client just not too terribly long ago make the joke that, well, you know, when I leave, though, I want the casket lined with $100 bills. He laughed at me, but sometimes the joke has a level of truth to it. Not saying at all that I had any judgment towards him, but you just, underneath humor oftentimes, there's some truth, and it might even be just some behavioral or things we need to wrestle through. So I just wonder if it's not really ours, because we don't bring it in with us, and we can't take it with us when we're gone. I wonder if during the in-between, the different phases in life that we go through, like, should we feel such the need to possess it to the degree that we do? Should we carry with us the fear and worry and anxiety about our finances that oftentimes can capture our mental picture of where we are? So we start in the same place, end in the same place, and we all surely go through different seasons in life. I'll ask you, because I'll share my experience in a second. Just go ahead and throw out, what was the first job you ever had?
Detasseling corn.
Ooh, detasseling corn. Makes me itch. Makes me think of early morning truck rides or bus rides to the field.
Mowing yards.
Mowing yards. I can resonate there. That was probably my first as far as making any money. Babysitting, yeah.
Delivering newspapers.
Yeah, great one. Great one. Did that a little bit with my dad as well. I can remember my first job, especially post-degree earning experience. So I decided pretty early on that I wanted to get into coaching, specifically college coaching. It's not an easy road. There's just not that many jobs that are open in a given year. So my first coaching experience was volunteering, and then trying to find what I thought was a job that I could piece it all together. I just remember working about 4 or 5 jobs, and it felt good, but I was in that struggling or surviving phase and season of life. And as I got to the more stable phase, I even found myself at times, after premarital and doing some reading on budgeting and kind of Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace University, I even started to struggle with, as we got more stable and secure, my bank account or my budget and the number attached to my savings could pretty easily become an idol or something that I was awfully focused on, and probably showed some control issues and exposed them at a heart level for me. I mentioned kids earlier. If you're not in this season of life, maybe your children are, or you can still remember the feeling. And oftentimes we're working with younger parents on this. When we have an opportunity to have some margin, oftentimes it feels like kids just kind of gobble it up in the food budget. Let alone if your kids have neighbor friends that they like that spend the summers with you, and then I guarantee you that grocery budget goes up. So the swinging of this margin meter, it's not just a guarantee that it goes right. Sometimes it bounces back left. So I think we can all relate to going through different seasons along the way. As we go through those seasons, I think it's a healthy question to ask, what does giving look like? What does generosity look like? What does serving others look like? Because it probably undoubtedly changes as we go. So we start with nothing. We can't take anything with us when we're gone from this world. We go through different seasons. We all share this in common too. There's really only 5 short-term things that we can do with money. The one that we'll start with, we have to be able to survive. We have to support our household, so we do spend money on living. Next, oftentimes we're in this conversation, especially in retirement planning seasons with our clients, trying to invest and grow. So saving towards growth, towards the future. Then obviously we've got to, at times, pay down debt, and then essentially always pay taxes that are owed. And then lastly, the other option that we have is to give. I'm curious what you think. This is just based on averages. As your income goes up, so year over year I make a little bit more money, let's assume, what happens to giving as a percentage of income? Yeah, just like statistical averages. As we make more money during our life, what happens to our giving as a percentage? Yeah, it actually does. The human behavior is we're comfortable, right? We establish something, whether it's thoughtful or arbitrary, and that is just the norm, and we make more money, and then it doesn't end up necessarily impacting how that fits into our whole picture about how we use and relate to money. Not to say that these should be 20% or are ever 20% equal pieces of the pie. That's going to ebb and flow over time. But oftentimes I think the world looks at the giving portion as optional. I would argue that in order to live a fulfilled, full life in the time that we have, that's actually achieved by giving so that it becomes optimal, so that we're optimizing our time and our days here and the impact that we can have on those around us. It all comes from a worldview foundation, though. So for me, in my worldview, and my family's worldview, really there's 2 foundational truths that then the rest of my life decisions are impacted by. If I believe, as I do, that God is the creator of the universe, and that Jesus died on the cross and gives me an opportunity to live in relationship with him, well, then I have a decision to make. Am I going to follow him or not? And if I'm going to follow him, Jesus teaches us an awful lot about money, about finances, and about stewardship. And sometimes that conflicts or pushes back on the way that, especially in Western culture, we are sold effectively. Does anybody remember this show? Annalise, do you know the show? No. Okay. So I told her I was going to pick on her a couple times. This is the first time. So Supermarket Sweep. Does anybody remember what happened at the end of the show? That's really the part I remember the most. So in Supermarket Sweep as a kid, I don't know what day of the week. It's easy to say Saturday mornings after cartoons, but Supermarket Sweep, there was a race that ended the show. You had a certain amount of time to go against 1 or 2 other competitors, and you sprinted around the grocery store trying to find the items that maybe they were small and expensive that fit, or the big ticket item that fit, and you won by buying the most effectively. Not that probably far apart from reality in our culture. If you look at the components that make up our gross domestic product in our country, almost 70%, more than 2/3 of GDP is made up of items that could be categorized as consumption driven. And that's not all bad, right? We are called to produce and be productive and provide goods and services that then have value. But it's just pretty true. We're pretty good at consuming, at using those 5 uses of money in the short term and focusing on the living side. Any physics majors, or anybody take physics in college or high school? Anybody remember Newton's laws of physics?
Reaction has a reaction.
Oh, that's one of them. Does anybody remember the first law of physics? Newton's first law of physics. Yeah, there you go. An object in motion stays in motion, and an object at rest stays at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. Like when we look at this, like pretty easy for us to be comfortable, fall into the status quo, assume we're doing fine when we compare towards other people. But the reality is that if we're looking for progress or something different, we have to be the thing or the choice that acts upon what is the status quo or norm in order for something more. And in this case, when we're having the conversation on giving, there must be intentionality to it, or it's just not going to accidentally happen. All right, so we start with nothing. We can't take anything with us. We know there's seasons along the way, uses for those dollars that we all share in common. Sometimes our worldview is going to conflict and contrast with the world's. So you're thinking, all right, so what's it mean for me? Let's use a metaphor. One that we're familiar with in the Midwest. Let's go to water or bodies of water. So oftentimes, if we were talking about money and finances and trying to put a picture to it, maybe it's a season of drought. Maybe that drought is caused, sometimes, it's not often, but sometimes we're trying to walk through and coach individuals that we advise, households that we advise, on trying to maybe solve a little bit of an income problem. And I hope it's surely not due to a lack of work ethic or drive to go find a job, but sometimes it's underemployment. Sometimes it's overspending, and it ends up where there's effectively no water left in the body of water. Anybody recognize this picture? Annalise, I'm going to pick on you again. This was the second time, so we'll just get it out of the way in the front half. West Quincy, so the flood of 93. So I tried to pick a real one here. But life with no boundaries. So the representation here, like the broken levee in West Quincy. But sometimes that's no boundaries on our giving. Sometimes that's no boundaries on our spending. Maybe if it's no boundaries on the giving, maybe it's giving almost to a fault without a plan, harming ourselves, whether it's accidentally, or just maybe without much thought and intentionality to it. Or it's no boundaries on our giving and we're enabling someone else. Like we think we're helping, but we're actually hurting. This is a fun one. Does anybody recognize this picture? Ah, there you go. The Dead Sea. So I cheated a little bit. I went rivers. So I said bodies of water, but the Dead Sea in the Middle East. All right, it's time for a giveaway. You got to take out your pen, though. We've got to have evidence, and it's just like the Price is Right. You can't go over. All right, if you go over, you're eliminated, but you got to write down your answer so that we can all trust each other. We've got a gift card to give away. I'm going to make it easier on you than I made it on the Quincy group. How many feet below sea level is the Dead Sea? I made them do meters, which we don't understand well. But how many feet below sea level is the Dead Sea? So you got we'll give you 10 seconds. No pressure. You got money on the line here. I won't be too hard on you. I won't give you the hard pencils down. But if you had between 0 and 500 feet below sea level, give me a show of hands. I'm sorry, you're eliminated. All right. So if you had between 500 and 1,000 feet, show of hands. Anybody in the maybe the earlier ones aren't eliminated. Anybody have around 1,000 feet? 1,100, 1,200, 1,300. Uh-oh, maybe you're back in. 1,400 feet? Who had more than 1,400 feet? I'm sorry, you're eliminated, I guess, by the Price is Right rules. So who had the highest number? Anybody have 500? 500? Okay, so it's actually 1,443 feet and getting lower below sea level. Well done, well done. I'm not going to say you were close, but you won. So you were effective. 1,443 feet, about 400 meters. If you've run a lap on a track recently, it's a little further than it looks. It's actually pretty far below sea level. It's the lowest point below sea level inland in the world. Pretty interesting. Only inflow. So if it's the money representation, it's only money in. There's no outflow. There's nowhere after the water comes in from the Jordan for it to go. And even though it looks beautiful, and it's actually pretty enjoyable, especially just looking at it from the outside, you can float in it, pretty unique. It's actually deadly. Nothing can live. So only inflow and nothing can live. 10 times the salt concentration of the ocean. So if you swam in a body of water and tasted that sea salt in your mouth and you weren't in the Dead Sea, I can't imagine really how salty that is. The salt concentration actually kills any organism that's living in it because it dehydrates the cells. It pulls the water out of the cells that promote life. So while beautiful on the outside and pretty fascinating, actually deadly and lifeless on the inside. And then I chose a good picture of a healthy river with boundaries, but freedom inside those boundaries. Productive, promotes life for itself and animals and commerce and productivity, and then promotes life even beyond its borders. I think a pretty good representation of water in, water out, movement and impact in its daily activities that we can see might differ from other representations of how we might interact with money and finances and stewardship. This is not my child, but it is a look that I am all too familiar with at times. So you're saying, okay, like I get it. Maybe I need to do some soul searching or wrestling with the heart and really consider some things here. And maybe you're kind of anticipating, all right, giving maybe should be more a part of my picture than I came in with, or maybe I need to take the next step in my generosity. But there's some things that I've heard, and I want to make sure that those are addressed. So we're going to go through 4 common misconceptions, we'll call them. The first, if I give a gift, it's going to be taxable. Right here, the picture is the dreaded 1040. If you filed an extension, you just saw this a week ago on the October 15th deadline. If not, we see it in the spring. And maybe you've heard, from Jimmy or Julie or your coworker or your parents or kids, whoever it is, if I give somebody something, it's going to be taxable. It depends, and it depends on what taxes you're talking about. Oftentimes we assume that I've heard of a gift tax. Maybe that's going to trigger something else, and I don't want to pay taxes on that, so how do I give it? Well, pretty fascinating, really. I could, and the lunch group teased me, so you're going to do this? No, I'm not going to do this. But I could actually give each of you $19,000 in a given year for 2025 and not have to report it at all. And I could just keep going. I could go out. It's the Oprah, you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car. I just don't have cars or $19,000 to give to each of you. But there's an annual exclusion that I can individually gift $19,000 and not have to worry about reporting it anywhere to the IRS in any given year. And it's gone up. It was $18,000 the year before. It's probably going to be inflation adjusted again. And if you're married filing jointly, you can actually each do it. And you can do it to different donors. You can be quite generous without incurring any gift taxes along the way. And let's say I gave $20,000 to one person in this year and effectively made what looks like a $1,000 taxable gift. Well, then you turn to the lifetime exemption. The lifetime exemption is now, for 2025, this close, really close, just under $14 million for each of us that we could gift effectively and not have to pay a gift tax on those dollars. Now, the source might depend if there's some taxation, if it's pulling from a pre-tax position in an IRA, if it's recognizing capital gains. Like, there could be some taxation, but not gift taxation, unless we're at a really high level. Pretty unique too, kind of like the annual exclusion, that $14 million, you and your spouse actually each get $14 million, and if one of you passes, the rest of their $14 million is portable to you. Wow, $28 million that we could gift. Now, a little bit of caveat here. If any of you are Illinois residents, when we start talking about gift taxes, not as much gift taxes, but especially estate taxes, there are some state-specific laws that make Illinois not as favorable as Missouri. So in Illinois, the estate tax, so not gift, transitioning a little bit to estate tax limit is $4 million. And all of the estate gets clawed back in if it's over $4 million. And there's no portability of your deceased spousal unused exemption. So those are just important things. Okay, if I live in Illinois, I better make sure I talk to my advisor because it might be different. But at the federal level, an awful lot of room for us all to be generous without having to worry about gift taxes. A great example of how this is commonly used is in 529 accounts. So 529 accounts are educational savings accounts that you could, if you wanted to, you could open it in your own name for your own benefit, or you can open them for, it could be friends, it could be children, it could be grandchildren, nieces, nephews, it really can be anybody, and the beneficiaries can change as you go depending on who's used the dollars. But they might give you a tax deduction on the way in, which can be a great benefit. For an individual in Missouri, you can actually receive an $8,000 tax deduction at the state level. In Illinois, $10,000 per individual. Then you can double that for married filing jointly. So there's an opportunity for some tax efficiency for those gifts to 529 savings accounts. Then it gets to grow and distribute for qualified educational expenses, potentially tax-free, definitely tax-free at the federal level, and then states, the laws are a little unique, and we would just talk to you about what those look like. Now, the legislation around how these are treated, it has changed an awful lot. There used to be the concern, if I contribute to a 529, and then what if my kid or grandkid or whoever doesn't go to college? Well, now it's trade school, it's K through 12. There's a lot of different things that you can use these on. You can change beneficiaries. I can pay off up to $10,000 per beneficiary in student loan debt over a lifetime. And then a really neat piece is, if there's dollars left in a 529, with some caveats to this, you can move those funds up to $35,000 into a Roth IRA for the beneficiary. So maybe your child or grandchild finishes, we'll just call it college, doesn't have to be, finishes their schooling, there's dollars left, you can, by a process, move those into retirement savings for that child too. Like, what a gift to teach them over a long period of time the impact of investing and compounding for long-term deferred savings. All right, the second one, everybody's favorite mopey cartoon character, Eeyore. What if I don't get any benefit for giving? I would flash back, first of all, and remind us what we'll say Grandma and Granddad taught us at Christmas. It's better to give than receive. Again, this echoes back to the heart level first. Now, there might be some benefits to giving at the tax level, but it's really hard to fake stewardship and generosity. Like, it's pretty hard to be selfish and give at the same time, if that's really where you're coming from. So, like, benefit, well, first we need to define and remember what benefit means. But there are some opportunities, some new, some maybe just unknown to you. The first is for most of us, starting in 2026, that receive the standard deduction. So it used to be pretty common to itemize on my Schedule A and then my 1040. Now, it's actually much less common because the standard deduction for individuals and married couples has gone up so much. For individuals who receive the standard deduction, starting in 2026, you can give $2,000 in cash if you're married, $1,000 if you file single, in cash to a public charity and receive a tax deduction. That didn't used to exist. Everybody just effectively received the standard deduction, and giving kind of lost any tax impact unless you were giving at pretty high levels or had other reasons to itemize. So that's pretty neat, and just consider it. If you're going to give a gift of cash to a charity over the next couple months, maybe, if it's not going to negatively impact the receiver, maybe we just wait till January. So there's some strategy there. If you are an itemizer, which is the minority of us, if you are an itemizer, there's still some opportunity. There's just some adjusted gross income calculations to this law that you would want to talk to us or your tax professional about. As I mentioned earlier, 529 plans are a good example of receiving some state tax deduction. There are other opportunities to receive state tax deductions for giving to nonprofit organizations. The list is long. It's really probably the situation where if there's something you're passionate about, we research that to see if there's a positive tax implication there. And, just a lot of different subtle planning that can go into that scenario. If you live in the state of Illinois, I mentioned a negative earlier from a state tax planning perspective, but Illinois actually just passed some pretty cool state law about giving to qualified charitable foundations. Oftentimes you see those through, for example, the Community Foundation. So there's the Community Foundation of West Central Illinois and Northeast Missouri that we actually work pretty closely with, and Pat Benson currently sits on the board for. So you can actually receive up to 25% of your gift as a tax credit at the state level in Illinois right now. And a tax credit of 25% of your gift is a pretty big deal. It can be an awfully impactful subtraction from what you owe at the state level. So that was pretty neat legislation to see them pass. Tax benefits of plan giving. Sometimes it's just a more tax efficient retirement. It's never too late to give, but if we have a longer runway and a good idea of our plan and what we need and how we define enough on an annual basis, and maybe as we project out towards the end of our life, maybe it's just that we start giving as we go, and we don't allow some of the IRS regulations, especially around required minimum distributions in our 70s for IRA dollars that are pre-tax. If we can just go ahead and start to figure out how to put some of those pre-tax dollars to use, maybe we don't end up with the government saying, this is the rules that you play by, and those rules, even if you don't want to take the dollars, can become burdensome along the way. You can kind of flip this script over too to a planning strategy that we use if you're familiar with Roth dollars or after-tax, tax-free type dollars. If you're familiar with those and maybe even Roth conversions, there's some planning where, again, we're just trying to smooth out your tax picture over your lifetime, and then, from a Roth perspective, the tax picture for those who inherit those dollars someday too. Lastly, as I mentioned, the state taxes, while not as common a conversation as they used to be because of now much higher thresholds at the federal level and Missouri not having the same, we'll call it negative implications of the state of Illinois, not as much a part of the conversation, but for those of us that might be in that range, maybe giving as we go and earlier on and using some of the things like the annual exemption make a lot of sense to, again, make sure that we're not paying more in taxes when our time on this earth is over than we would like, just in order to be more effective in how we pass to the next generation. This is some people in our office's favorite, mostly because of the character involved. Does anybody know who the character is? Scrooge McDuck. So Scrooge is diving into his treasure here, right? And he's got all sorts of different things going on. He's got the gold coins, he's got the jewels, he's got the equipment. Maybe we've thought, well, okay, so I'll give, and it just doesn't really matter where I'll give from. I'm just going to give. That just might not be what captures the most momentum for your plan. So there oftentimes is a conversation on, all right, I'm ready to give, so where do I give from? Because there's different positions we can give from. There's different tax implications. Maybe it's just that I've got Social Security and I'm comfortable with that being what provides for our lifestyle. Maybe it's Social Security and a pension. And maybe I've got pre-tax IRA dollars that, yeah, someday are going to be required to be taken out or taxed, and they're just growing right now, and I don't know that I'm ever going to really feel a need for them. It's more of just a legacy implication. Maybe that's where we give from, and we'll talk about why and how in just a second. This might be the hardest question that I ask you, and I'm an old basketball coach, so I'm giving you a hint there. Does anybody know who the man in the picture is? We are 0 for 2 in Quincy and at lunch today. He became, we'll call him pseudo pop culture famous a couple years ago, and a meme. That's basically why I used him. So here we're using him, the shoulder shrug of, I don't know if I'm going to use these dollars effectively. It's just a legacy play. So if you remember, if you're a sports fan, Michael Jordan hitting 6 threes in the first half against the Trail Blazers in the postseason, then running down the sideline, he gave an infamous shrug. Like, what are they going to do to stop me? Well, this is one of Michael Jordan's at the United Center personal security team members, and MJ, I'm not going to condone the behavior, but being the competitor that he is, they used to gamble in the hallway before games. It was after MJ had given the famous shrug and he was taunting the greatest basketball player of all time because he was beating him in a game. So he's given the shoulder shrug to taunt the greatest basketball player of all time. We're using him here as an example of, I don't know what I'm going to use these dollars for, and I might not have a need, so what could I use them for now, or should they just sit and grow? The second, if you're nearing or in your 70s or later and you're charitably inclined and have pre-tax IRA dollars, maybe there's a fit for either of these circumstances to go ahead and give from that source. The next time where we might consider, do I give from retirement, do I give from non-retirement, is more of a legacy planning conversation. Beneficiary designation. Doesn't always seem that exciting, but can be awfully practical. I was just sitting with a household just last week, and they don't have any children. And so they've been kind of wrestling with, other than giving to my spouse when I pass, who should I leave our dollars to? And one of the individuals had landed on, okay, I'm pretty passionate about a couple organizations, and I want to leave 60% when my time is gone and my spouse is gone of my assets to these organizations. And we leave another 40% of whatever's left of mine when I'm gone to a couple friends. Sounded great. And I think the assumption was just, hey, we're going to blanket 60% on every beneficiary designation form, 40% blanket again across all their accounts. Well, the interesting conversation that we then had is, all right, you have pre-tax IRA dollars that someday when those are inherited and distributed, the IRS is going to collect some taxes on if it's a person who is distributing them. They also had Roth IRA dollars, so dollars that had already been taxed. And then someday when they are distributed, will be distributed tax-free under most circumstances, as long as they meet those qualified rules. Then they also had non-IRA dollars, so taxable dollars, non-retirement account assets. And we had the conversation of, great, you love these organizations, let's give those organizations your pre-tax IRA dollars someday when you're gone. Why? Because those nonprofits are tax exempt. And when they distribute your IRA funds, they're not going to have to pay taxes on it. And then we leave more, effectively, because of tax efficiency purposes, to your human beneficiaries someday by giving them the Roth and the taxable dollars that will be much more tax efficient. Again, it's not trying to avoid paying taxes for the sake of avoiding. It's just trying to create momentum, give generously to those who you want to receive those gifts, and do it in a legal and momentum building way. So we transition from IRA dollars or retirement dollars and then have a conversation about non-retirement assets. So a great example here is anyone familiar with the company Palantir? So if you hold any individual stock portfolios that we manage, you would have Palantir in your portfolio. Palantir is a software defense company, and they have grown in worth tremendously over the last couple years. So if you owned Palantir a couple of years ago, you probably bought them relatively inexpensively. And now, because they've had such growth as a company, it's a highly appreciated stock. So people, if it's in a taxable account, a non-retirement account, look at Palantir and they're like, what do I do? Do I sell it and take some gains and then I've got to pay taxes? It kind of creates this conundrum, this confliction of, okay, now what do I do? All that growth is a good thing, but what's my answer to that situation? The other consideration to talk about here is, what if I have sold? Maybe it's farmland, maybe it's a highly appreciated asset, like a business, and I have recognized all these capital gains, and in both of these cases, I'm charitably inclined. I want to give. There's a tool called a donor-advised fund that we'll talk about in just a second. So there's times where giving out of your IRA makes a lot of sense. Times where giving out of your non-retirement account in taxable dollar positions makes a lot of sense. So if we back up and we look at the first column over here, the first two really, There is a technique called a qualified charitable distribution, or a QCD, that if I am age 70 and a half or older, I can take, if we look over here at the left, I'm the donor, I have IRA dollars, I want to give directly to a charity, and I get to effectively, like the kids in the picture, leapfrog the IRS and not pay taxes. It doesn't have to match the amount of your required minimum distribution. Oftentimes, especially if I don't have any need for the dollars, it may match. But sometimes required minimum distributions get quite large. You can make several qualified charitable distributions in a given year. You can gift to different organizations. You can actually gift more than your required minimum distribution. A single individual can gift up to $108,000 this year through qualified charitable distributions, or a married household can gift up to double that, $216,000 via QCD. So a very powerful tool, honestly pretty easy, and it's gained a lot of popularity. We were talking in the office just before sharing these topics, and like it might just be the way that many of us, especially from a pre-tax position, even with some new tax laws like the giving $2,000 in cash to a public charity, even with that, like this still probably is the option that we think makes the most sense if it fits in your financial plan. The other conversation point was a donor advised fund. So if I hop back here 2 slides, over on the right-hand columns, we had the highly appreciated asset. We had the business sale or land sale or appreciated asset that we've recognized a gain on. And then in a given year, we could go and make a gift of cash or a gift of an appreciated asset and receive a charitable deduction in that year. So if we're looking for a charitable deduction in that year, it's probably a pretty substantial gift to this fund. The fund is not in your name. It is out of your estate. It is irrevocable. I can't gift to a donor advised fund, get a tax credit, and then 3 years later pull those funds back out for my benefit. But what I get to do is I get to gift in a given year, get a tax break in that year, and then for years to come, gift from that position. I give recommendations to the fund. Those assets can continue to grow. They can be invested. And then I recommend grants to charities from the fund. They are a really fast growing fund. We help manage several of them for clients. Organizations like Community Foundation manage donor advised funds as well. QCDs and donor advised funds, they can make a lot of sense. Do they make sense for everybody? No. But from a tax efficiency standpoint, they're fantastic tools that clients that we work with can use for their benefit and be charitably inclined and receive some tax benefit for using them. All right, I'm gonna give you fair warning. This slide is meant to be a little bit in jest. It is an expression that gets used in our industry. I still remember the first time I heard it. And when I heard it, it's what came to my mind. It is of significance to our area. There's a connection to this historical event here locally. The movie that came out about the historical event, I'm not the spoiler tonight, it's been out for about 30 years. So if you don't know the ending to the movie, you had 30 years to watch it. So that's not my fault for spoiling it. But there's an expression in our industry, if the misconception is it doesn't matter when I give, there's a conversation about, would I rather give warm-handed while I'm able to come alongside and walk alongside the people I'm giving to, or cold-handed? So if you know the story of Rose and Jack on the Titanic, they find love, they have these, this memorable week together as they sail across the ocean, but sadly Jack, he doesn't make it. So in our world, like the conversation is oftentimes, yes, I can leave a legacy at the end of my life that can be fantastic and generous and impactful, or I can also live a legacy as we go and teach and educate and help others grow and invest and create positive behaviors that can hopefully then impact them for years to come, even when we're gone. So when we're gone doesn't just have to be dollars and cents. It can also be behaviors and mindsets and worldviews that are impactful for generations to come. Some benefits of giving as we go. A great example is giving to experiences. And so it could be meals. Maybe just getting your family together is hard, but something that you can afford doing, and I'm going to go and I'm going to pay for it, and we're going to do it consistently, and it's going to matter, and it's going to be moments and conversations that we value for a long time. Maybe it's travel. Maybe it's the big family trip. We see that a lot where, hey, we're going to go, we're going to take the kids and grandkids, we're going to pay for it, and it's going to be a moment in time that they remember for the rest of their lives. At our church, oftentimes it's around this time of year, we do what's called Rethinking Christmas. And as a Christmas gift to children at our church, you can actually scholarship them for the next year's summer camps that they go to all across the Midwest. So again, instead of giving them the gift that's maybe not permanent, that's temporary, that gets thrown out in the trash a year or two and broken later, if your kids are anything like mine, they're pretty hard on stuff like that. But maybe it's the experience of spending time doing something that makes them a little uncomfortable and gives them a life-changing experience along the way. Maybe it's the anniversaries that you celebrate. Maybe it's the weddings. Maybe when we look at things like giving as we go, it's maximizing impact. I know my wife and I, we've been blessed by this. Obviously, someday, if there's an inheritance, whoever receives the inheritance, like financially, is going to be blessed by that. But there have been times in our life where that margin meter is swinging and maybe bouncing and having a hard time getting out of that, struggling or finding a way to survive, where a gift from family or friends has meant an awful lot. Maybe you're in a surplus phase where that margin meter has swung, but you see, somebody needs help with the car repair or the down payment on the house, or the wedding that you help pay for, or the honeymoon, or the health expenses, or just that urgent need. Maybe it's for a family member or friend or a total stranger. Let's also just consider and contrast, and I'm going to make it as simple as we can from a numeric perspective, the contrast of giving as we go towards experiences and needs and living a legacy, and then leaving a legacy, and sometimes how that can, again, just not create the same momentum that we want for those who we're gifting to. Let's say I'm 90 years old, and I pass away, and I had one child, and that one child I had when we were 30 years old. So I pass at 90, I have one child who is 60. And I, again, for round number purposes, I leave $1 million pre-tax IRA too. Didn't have a lot of need for it. It grew and grew and grew. It's still a blessing, right? Like $1 million that I leave to my child, who now I leave behind. But just for argument's sake, they are 60. Let's say they are successful, right? When we're 60, oftentimes we're making the most money that we've ever made professionally. We have advanced in our career, and now there's $1 million account that's never been taxed that is gifted to me through a legacy, and the IRS is going to say you have effectively 10 years to take those dollars out. So we don't know when we're going to leave this earth. I mean, it's not uncommon to see individuals in their 80s and 90s leave large sums of money that then the IRS says, hey, human beneficiary who's not a spouse, so oftentimes a child, who's already in a higher tax bracket, guess what? Now maybe you're taking out another $50,000, $100,000 a year, and it's just stacking on your marginal tax bracket, and not as much of the gift as you would have liked them to receive as being actually given to them. So there's some of that, I would call it weighing and measuring, that goes into just maybe making you wrestle with when to give instead of just trying to grow towards a number that's as big as possible later in life. All right, maybe taxes were just like, man, I like the first half better, and taxes have lost me. So I understand. Let's just talk about a couple more ideas where we can give creatively. The first, I mentioned 529 accounts earlier. Maybe you're just not thinking that, I really just don't know if my child or my grandchild or my friend's child, I don't know that education is going to be where they need those dollars gifted to. So maybe it's things like an UTMA account, which is a non-education, it's a taxable account for a minor. It's a custodial account that an adult oversees. And it can be tax efficient. They can be rather large, honestly. Maybe it's an ABLE account. Maybe someone in your family or close to you is disabled as a youth, and some of the laws are changing about how these accounts work, but maybe it's an ABLE account that they then can use dollars, kind of protected dollars that don't harm the benefits that they might receive from the state, but they can use some of these dollars for their benefit. Maybe it's a minor Roth. Maybe you've got a young adult in your life, a teenager who's a go-getter, they're working, they're making money, and you decide to have a conversation with them, maybe it's, hey, if you go make $1,000 this summer, lifeguarding at the pool, I'll match the $1,000 that you make and put it in your minor Roth account. So there's some rules around minor Roths. It has to be based on earned income. But again, maybe you're incentivizing hard work, rewarding hard work, and teaching them the lessons of investing for the long term. Another example that I love, I thought was a really neat example, an individual that I know, really successful, did not come from wealth, has built multiple businesses, has 2 children of his own. His wife has passed, and his children are successful, and he's going to gift to them in different ways, and he's supported them in different ways. But the extended family, his nieces and nephews, we'll say 15 of them, don't necessarily have the same financial support systems in their life. So each year, what he has done is he gifts to these 15 nieces and nephews, if they're able, by tax law, $7,000 each to max fund their Roth IRA. What a generous gift. The rules that he has is he gets to see the account each year, and if they touch it, which they could, because Roths are funded with after-tax dollars, you have access to the contributions. If they touch it, it's the last year that they get the gift from their uncle to fund the Roth IRA. He's basically saying, I'll help you with your retirement savings to give you more margin in your life, and hopefully, again, try to teach you the lifelong lessons that he wants them to learn. Sadly, he's done this for many years. We'll call it 15 nieces and nephews. Do you know how many thank yous he got last year when he did it? Sadly, only 1. I think it's probably kind of back to Newton's law. I think they've gotten comfortable, probably. I don't think they mean to insult him. But again, and that's just kind of that tension he feels, but he wants to keep gifting to him. And he's doing it out of a right heart posture. A really neat technique that can help solve a problem that we often hear. So many times, this is part of the conversation. We're working with a client, and we'll just say they've got 2 children. And we have these dollars that someday we know we're going to leave to those children. Like maybe we're using kind of this side of our accounts for our life, but we know that this side is growing and it's beyond the finish line that we have set for what is enough for us. And these we're really just trying to grow, but we'd also like to help take care of our kids. We'll just call it 2 kids. But we want to be fair. We don't want to mistreat one, but they're totally different kids. Maybe one is financially successful and stable and the other is going through a difficult time. So they say, like, how can I do it and track it and make sure it's fair? One of the best things that we do, and it doesn't create any necessary taxation just by separating an account, is just by opening separate accounts. Could be retirement, could be non-retirement accounts. And then maybe the primary beneficiary is your spouse, and the contingent beneficiary is one of the children on one account, one of the children on the other account. So it allows you to gift freely and give when needs come up or wants come up that you want to give to without feeling the tension of like, I'm playing favorites and I don't know how to handle it. So a really cool technique. And sometimes we've dealt with this one too. It's I've got this one account and I want to gift to my grandkids, but I've got 30 grandkids. Do we want to open 30 accounts? Probably at that point, we just kind of help you track the beneficiaries and we help you track the distributions and we keep an internal document that says, hey, year over year, if you gifted $1,000 to Jimmy, we just tweak his beneficiary status a little bit and kind of prorate it out. Because managing and you overseeing all those different accounts, there's a certain level of complexity to it, but it can be a very, very valuable tool. And then there's times, honestly, where either the estate is so complicated or it might be unique family scenarios where there just needs to be more advanced planning that comes into play. There's an awful lot of ways that you can be charitable and tax efficient and accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish that they're not cookie cutter. And we need to quarterback out to legal counsel, and we're happy to sit with you in those meetings and make sure that your intentions are being met by the different legal designs that might be at play. All right, so if you're saying, now I'm almost stuck and confused and that was a lot, like that's okay. That actually probably means that you've hung in there a little bit. Because if the tryptophan had hit from the turkey and you really glazed over, that wouldn't be the question that you're wrestling with. So if that's how you feel, then great. Okay, maybe there's something, we'll call it, one or two things that spoke to you. Maybe it was at the heart level, maybe it's at the tactical, strategic level, and that starts a conversation with us. Maybe it's that concept of setting a finish line and deciding what's enough, because that's a question we all wrestle with, like what's enough for us? What's enough annually on a cash flow basis? What's enough later in life for us to make sure that our needs are met? And we define those things, and then we think, okay, well, what about the rest? What if it's coming in and saying, hey, we've been through planning with you, and we've seen things like Monte Carlo simulations that say, am I going to have enough at age 90 someday? And my plan is still strong. And you see that, and you're like, wow, 95% success probability on my plan. That sounds great. But maybe it's saying, okay, what if we dial up the giving now and turn down that probability of success a little bit from 95% to 93 or 95% to 90. And then there's more trust and maybe an element of faith that comes into it, that you trust that maybe what looks like a slightly weaker plan is actually a more impactful plan along the way. So hopefully there's things tonight that have caused you to, again, maybe squirm a little bit. Like, okay, like maybe he's talking to me. Maybe I don't want to admit it yet, but maybe next time I come into the office and we sit down and we go deeper into the plan, it's the start of a new conversation. So I hope that our time together tonight has made you maybe reshape some misconceptions into clarity that needed to be addressed. Maybe it's also a prompting to a deeper, different conversation the next time we get together. So I thank you so much. I thank you for trusting us at Benson Financial Group. Thanks for coming in and spending your evening with us. We know you have other options that you could do. I'm happy to sit and hang out and talk and answer questions that you've got. There might be some questions, though, too, where I say, well, maybe that's a Justin or Jared or Ben or Pat or Tim question the next time that you guys get together. But again, thank you for coming. It's been a blessing that you've been here, and we appreciate you.